the migrating patterns of whales and of other pelagic species were also kind of a signpost and indicator for those journeys. So the study of those over the years going out into the Pacific and heading and seeing the activity in the ocean of tangaroa and the children of the children of Pane, the birds that also were part of the ocean life, that watch the migratory species and over time kind of work out that they were going from one place to another. And there were certain birds that hung off islands, they use the islands to roost at night. So if they were out at sea 30 miles out, you can't see land. If you can see a massive bird heading in a particular direction for the early exploration, I guess that was one of the key indicators. Now mapping and star charts are going to be covered in a little bit more detail, but having an idea of where you are in relation to other land masses is quite important if you're sailing the Waka. And the star chart that will be covered off. It didn't take the Austronesians and then the Polynesians to kind of work out the relationship between the stars and particular islands, and so I was going to star navigate here tonight to be able to talk about that. The other part of the exploration process and the science behind it was the study of hull design. We went out on the Aotearoa Waka today, and that's a hull design, I guess, that goes back quite a few hundred years, notwithstanding the fact that it's made of different materials. They didn't have fiberglass then, but the hull design, how that was configured, and also the sails, and the type of sails that we used, that gives you some idea of the science that was involved. So coming to Tahiti as just one of the areas, I mean, we talk about Hawaii Nui, Hawaii Roa, Hawaii Pamama, but if, with the Horota story, and I had to tell the Transit of Venus people, because there were historians and all sorts of brain trust people there, that the story that I told about the Horota was Rawhakata Albert story mixed in with some of the local stuff that we've been involved in. So it wasn't an apology, it was just saying, well, this is the story that I tell. The wind, the weather patterns, currents and all those sorts of things, when a journey of the enormity, 1,600 miles, was being planned, a lot had to be taken into consideration. So that was roughly the journey of the Horota out of the islands to Ahuahu, which is in the Mercury Islands up near Whitianga. So they arrived there. I mean, when you talk to some of the scientists and they've gone through what was in existence then, the suggestion is that they would have arrived at Ahuahu with kumara, with yam, puddle, and perhaps Polynesian pigs that would have died off fairly quickly or been eaten because they couldn't survive the cold down here. After staying a little while in Ahuahu, the expedition took off from there. The expedition leader was Pawa. The navigator was Kiwa. In the crew was Hinea Kiridani, Pawa's sister. She was in some books described as a priestess. And there was a whole whānau or set of whānau. It was a big one. So one day, Pawa decided that they would come and live around on the east coast of this landmass. People were already living here because Kupe, Toi, Whaponga, and some of the other explorers had already arrived. So they had some idea about where they were going to. They set off from Ahuahu and got blown by a severe storm back into Ohiwa, just the other side of Portugal. The storm must have been ferocious because it flipped them over. You can imagine a huge waka, an ocean-going waka, getting overturned and broken in the surf, or damaged in the surf. They carried 7 calabashes with gods. They carried kumara and kind, sufficient for the journey. One of the women on board was killed as part of that stranding or that storm. And they were able to right the waka, rescue the calabashes and the kumara, probably some of the kite. And Pawa at that stage decided to split their voyage into 3 separate journeys. So those 3 journeys, the first one he asked Kiwa if he would sail the damaged all over the waka around to where they intended to come to, which was here. So after doing a bit of patch-up work with the skeleton crew, Kiwa set off. He sailed up to Te Aroha, and at Te Aroha they stopped for a while, planted some kumara there, and mixed with some of the people who were already residents. And my whakapapa, that's where my dad's father lives, so probably got part of their DNA as well at that stage. They sailed out of there and around to Muriwai, where Heneha Kirani got off the waka, and took kumara and planted a garden at Manawari. Got some rocks from Puketapu, and there's a whole series of stories around Heneha Kirani's stay at Muriwai. The waka then sailed back and up the river and to Haiti. The second journey involved calabashes carrying the gods. 7 calabashes, so there would have been at least 7 warriors carrying those calabashes. As soon as they picked the calabashes up with karakia and incantation, they became tapu. So there would have been a party going ahead of them, preparing their campsite and their food. And when they arrived at that campsite, they would have then been fed, and that forward party would have then gone on ahead of them. All they could do of themselves was drink, kneel down into the streets. Unfortunately, you see where the thing splits off into 2 separate journeys. Well, the forward party took the shortcut at Te Kaha, exited stage right and shot through to Kandia near Rotorua. The warriors carrying the calabashes missed the turn for whatever reason, and they walked from Te Kaha right around, followed that green line down to Whangarā without food, just with drink. So they rode drink out the creeks. When they got to Whangarā, they were starving and almost dead. The last part of the journey was completed because Pawa, who had taken the third party to look for a tree, a mighty tree to prepare the waka, had come down at a couple of points from the Kumara. And the second journey down to the sea to Whangarā, that's where he found the calabash party, able to feed and replenish them when they came through the river. So Pawa discovered this wonderful big tree that was going to be used to repair the waka, Kumara, and he was able to cut it down. He was then having difficulty getting it down to the sea. Te Waiho Pawa urinated, Mimi, and that was the legend, huge Mimi. As I got the log down to the sea, he probably dammed the river up and did it that way. But the Waiho Pawa, or the Waipawa River, that's one of the stories from this thing. And also, when Pawa got down onto the flats, he had a dog, a wonderful dog that he loved, and the dog went missing, waiting or kuri in that area, looking around for the dog, couldn't find it, came out to the beach, and he was so sad about it, he wanted his dog immortalised in some ways. So looked across, saw Yeoman's Head with that beautiful headland. So Te Kuri a Pāua is the our name for it, as well as Yeoman's Head. This photograph was taken about 1880 in the 1880s. It shows what the river looked like at that stage. And if you think when the Horota arrived, probably 1200 or 1300, would have looked, quite a lot different. And if you have a look at the middle point, up where the houses, close to where the houses are, that's the Haipiki area, and the bridge would shoot across from where those buildings are sticking out. So if you're thinking about what it looks like in Brooking. So when the waka came up, the whole configuration of the river was quite a lot different. You had the wall and then the harbour had been set up. So this is from roughly about the same area, what it looks like now, and the Tiaturangi and the Haipiki Park is to the left of the bridge. So Te Kuri a Pāua is part of our history, and for Ngāi Tamaniti, it's also significant because in the lagoon, the Whero Lagoon is the last resting place of the Horota waka. That's kind of the story, but Uncle Temple Isaac, when we're talking about the Horota and its resting place, we're currently in Ngāi Tamaniti are just settling a claim at the moment, treaty claim, and part of the lagoon was given back from the government as part of that claim process because of the significance of the story of the Horota. But Uncle Temple remembers as a child the Horota coming to the surface in that lagoon, and the story he tells is that they took a bulldozer out and they tied chains around it because they wanted to fall out the sand. They couldn't move it. They went home, had a sleep. I think they went to the pub as well. When they came back the next morning, the thing had disappeared. So they then felt that the Horota was meant to be in that place, and